210 American soldiers faced 800 warriors on a Montana hillside. In less than an hour, not a single one would survive. But the most terrifying part isn't how they died. It's what happened after the shooting stopped, June 25th, 1876. The temperature, 90 degrees. The death toll, 268 Americans in under 2 hours. An entire civilization's future would pivot on what happened next on those blood-soaked hills. By the end of this video, you'll understand why everything you thought you knew about Custer's last stand is wrong, and why the real story is far more horrifying. First, you'll discover why Custer's men weren't heroes making a last stand, but panicked soldiers running for their lives. Second, you'll learn the chilling reason native warriors spent hours after the battle on the battlefield. And third, you'll understand how one survivor witnessed everything and couldn't tell anyone. Picture this. The Montana sun beats down on scattered bodies. Horses wander among the dead. The smell of gunpowder hangs in the still air. Comanche, a cavalry horse, stands among 210 corpses. 7 bullets pierce his body, but he lives. He saw everything. He watched as America's most celebrated Indian fighter led his men into annihilation. He witnessed the moment when military discipline collapsed into terror. He survived what no human could, but here's what the history books won't tell you. Those soldiers didn't die in neat rows. Weapons raised in defiance, they died running, crying, begging. Some were found in ravines, hiding, others in clusters, having shot each other rather than face what was coming. The battlefield stretched over miles because these weren't men making a stand, they were men in full flight. To understand how 210 elite cavalrymen met such a horrific fate, we need to go back 3 months to when the United States government decided the Black Hills gold was worth more than any treaty. If you're fascinated by the untold truths behind history's most misunderstood battles, hit that like button and subscribe for more revelations from America's frontier wars. Now let me take you back to the spring of 1876, when 3 armies converged on Montana territory with one goal: force the Lakota and Cheyenne onto reservations. The 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty had promised the Black Hills to the Lakota forever, but forever lasted only 6 years. In 1874, George Armstrong Custer himself led an expedition that found gold in those sacred hills. Within 2 years, 15,000 miners flooded the territory. The government offered to buy the land. When the tribes refused, Washington chose a different solution. Military force. Enter the boy General George Armstrong Custer, who graduated last in his West Point class, but rose to become the youngest general in the Civil War at age 23. By 1876, reduced to lieutenant colonel, he commanded the 7th Cavalry Regiment. His flowing hair and buckskin jackets made him a frontier celebrity, but his men knew him differently. He once had soldiers FG'd for minor infractions. He abandoned a campaign to visit his wife. He ordered deserters shot without trial. Against him stood Sitting Bull the Prophet, a Lakota, a holy man whose visions united the scattered bands. At 45, he commanded respect through spiritual power, not military might. His people called him slow for his deliberate manner, but his visions had never failed. That spring, he had seen soldiers falling into camp like grasshoppers from the sky. And there was Crazy Horse, the untouchable, the military genius who had never been photographed, never signed a treaty, never lost a battle. His decoy tactics at Fort Phil Kearny had lured 80 soldiers to their deaths. Now, 25,000 natives had gathered along the Little Bighorn River, the largest assembly of Plains tribes ever recorded. The Army's plan seemed foolproof. 3 columns would converge like a closing fist. General George Crook would march north from Wyoming. Colonel John Gibbon would move east from Montana. General Alfred Terry, with Custer's 7th Cavalry as his strike force, would push west from Dakota Territory. Together, they fielded 500 soldiers with artillery, Gatling guns, and supply trains. But this industrial army faced an enemy they didn't understand. The Native Confederation wasn't a fixed target. It was a fluid force that could scatter and reassemble at will. Warriors carried Winchester repeating rifles traded from Canadian merchants, while many soldiers still used single-shot Springfields. The tribes knew every hill, every water source, every escape route in their ancestral lands. Then something happened that defied all military logic. On June 17th, Crazy Horse met Crook's column at Rosebud Creek. In a 6-hour battle, the natives fought the soldiers to a standstill. Crook, claiming victory, retreated to Wyoming to resupply. He sent no word to Terry or Gibbon. The closing fist now had one finger broken. But Custer had a secret weapon, or so he thought. His Crow and Arikara scouts could track anything that moved across the plains. What he didn't know was that these scouts already sensed something terribly wrong. The trail they followed showed more lodgepole marks than anyone had seen before. Too many, far too many. The 7th Cavalry that rode out from Fort Abraham Lincoln consisted of 31 officers and 566 enlisted men. These weren't frontier novices. Many were Civil War veterans hardened by years of plains warfare. They carried Springfield Model 1008, 173 carbines, Colt revolvers, and sabers they would leave behind as useless weight. Each trooper packed 100 rounds of ammunition, hardtack, and salt pork for 15 days. General Terry offered Custer 2 Gatling guns and a company of infantry. Custer refused both. The guns would slow him down, he said. Speed and mobility would win this campaign. His scouts shook their heads but said nothing. You didn't argue with Long Hair when his mind was set. The native village along the Little Bighorn stretched for 3 8,000 people, men, women, children, elderly, lived in over 1,000 lodges. This wasn't a war camp, but a mobile city. The pony herd alone numbered 20,000. Warriors came and went, but at any moment between 500 and 2,000 fighting men could respond to attack. Half Yellow Face, Custer's lead Crow scout, tried to explain the magnitude. More enemies than leaves on all the trees, he said through an interpreter. Another scout, Bloody Knife, predicted they would find enough Lakota to keep them fighting for days. White Man Runs him warned that the trail showed a village larger than any warrior had seen. 24 different scouts from 3 different tribes all said the same thing. Turn back, but here's what the history books won't tell you. Custer had reasons for his confidence that went beyond arrogance. His entire career proved that aggressive action worked. At Witter River in 1868, he had attacked a Cheyenne village at dawn, killing over 100 people, including Chief Black Kettle. The pattern was established: strike hard, strike fast, and natives would scatter. On June 22nd, the 7th Cavalry reached the abandoned Sundance grounds on Rosebud Creek. Here, scouts found something that made their blood freeze. A sand drawing showed soldiers falling head first into an Indian camp. Sitting Bull's vision, recreated for all to see, the scouts understood. Custer saw only superstition. What Custer didn't know would kill them all. While his column followed the massive trail up Rosebud Creek, warriors watched from every hillside. Contrary to Army intelligence, these weren't separate bands that might flee in different directions. The threat of military force had unified them into a single coordinated force. Sitting Bull's diplomacy had brought together Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho in numbers never seen before. The night of June 24th brought the first crack in discipline. Soldiers found a fresh campsite with abandoned goods, cavalry equipment from the Battle of the Rosebud. The troopers began looting. Officers struggled to restore order. Mark Kellogg, a reporter embedded with the column, noted the men seemed jumpy, unlike their usual confidence. Here's the detail that changes everything. Custer planned to rest on June 25th and attack at dawn on the 26th, following his successful Washita pattern. But at 9:00 p.m. on the 24th, scouts reported warriors had discovered their position. If Custer waited, the village might scatter. He ordered a night march. Through darkness, 600 exhausted men and horses stumbled along Rosebud Creek. No one slept. Horses went without water. By 3:00 a.m. on June 25th, they crossed the divide between the Rosebud and Little Bighorn valleys. Scouts climbed a high point called the Crow's Nest. As dawn broke, they saw smoke rising from the valley 15 miles distant. The sheer magnitude of what lay ahead finally penetrated even Custer's confidence. Scout Mitch Buer, who knew this country better than any white man, spoke plainly. "General, if you attack that camp, you and all your men will be killed." Custer's reply revealed everything. "I guess you're a coward," Boyer responded. "I'll go wherever you do, but we'll both be dead." Dawn broke on June 25th. Within hours the killing would begin. 5:00 a.m. From the Crow's Nest, scouts strained their eyes in the growing light. They see what looks like the largest pony herd on the Great Plains, worms crawling across the distant valley floor. Thousands upon thousands of horses. Morning cook fires send up so much smoke it looks like morning mist. Half-yellow face points and says one word. "Look." Custer squints through his field glasses. His eyesight, never strong, fails him now. He sees only shadows. By 8:00 a.m., Custer makes the decision that seals their fate. Despite planning to rest his exhausted men and attack at dawn the next day, he'll strike immediately. Warriors have spotted army horses. If he waits, his scouts warn, the village will scatter like quail. Everything in Custer's experience says natives flee when faced with cavalry. Strike now or lose the chance for glory. At noon, under a sun already brutal, Custer divides his command. Captain Frederick Benteen takes 3 companies, 125 men, to scout bluffs to the south. His orders: pitch into anything you find. Major Marcus Reno gets 3 companies, 140 men, to cross the Little Bighorn and charge the southern end of the village. Custer keeps 5 companies, 210 men, and turns north, paralleling the river. 1 pack train with ammunition stays behind, guarded by Captain Thomas McDougall's company. 700 fighting men have become 4 separate forces, unable to support each other, approaching an enemy that outnumbers them nearly 3-1. But Custer didn't know something crucial. The village wasn't running. Warriors were painting themselves for battle, checking weapons, catching their best war ponies. Women secured children and began packing valuables, not to flee, but to free their men for fighting. Sitting Bull, too old for combat, would guard the women and children. Crazy Horse prepared his warriors for the soldiers he knew were coming. At 2 p.m., Reno's battalion reaches the Little Bighorn. The river runs low, barely knee-deep on the horses. They splash across at a natural ford. Ahead stretches a valley floor, 3 miles of open ground leading to the village. Dust clouds rise as hundreds of ponies scatter. Reno forms his men in battle line. Company A on right, Company M on left, Company G in center. 112 men in blue against the haze. Then came the moment of no return. Reno orders the charge. Horses surge forward at a gallop. The ground shakes. Dust billows. 3 miles to cover. But after 1 mile, warriors appear like ghosts from ravines. Not fleeing, advancing, hundreds of them firing from horseback, whooping their war cries. More pour from the village every second. This decision would haunt the survivors forever. Reno orders his men to halt, dismount, form skirmish line. Every fourth trooper holds horses while 3 others fire. It's textbook cavalry tactics, except they're outnumbered 10 to 1 and in open ground with no cover. Warriors sweep around both flanks like water around a rock. The abandoned dawn attack plan might have worked. Soldiers hitting a sleeping village create panic, but now at 3:00 in the afternoon, they face fully prepared warriors defending their families. Winchester repeaters against single-shot Springfields, mobility against fixed positions, knowledge of terrain against strangers to this land. Meanwhile, Custer leads his 5 companies north along bluffs overlooking the river. He can hear gunfire from Reno's fight, but can't see through dust and terrain. His last message to Reno, carried by trumpeter John Martin: "Benteen, come on, big village, be quick." Bring packs. Martin would be the last man to see Custer's battalion alive, but the warriors had something Custer didn't expect. Tactical brilliance. While hundreds engaged Reno, keeping him pinned, hundreds more rode north, hidden by the terrain. They knew where Custer must go. The natural ford at Medicine Tail Coulee, the only place his heavy cavalry horses could cross. Crazy Horse and Gall led their warriors in a massive flanking movement. Back at Reno's position, the skirmish line collapses after 30 minutes. Scouts die first. Bloody Knife's brains splatter across Reno's face. The major, some say drunk, others say stunned. Orders retreat to timber along the river, but the trees offer little protection. Warriors infiltrate from all sides. After another 30 minutes, Reno shouts to mount and ride for the bluffs across the river. What follows isn't retreat, but rout. Men flee in panic. The crossing becomes a killing ground. Soldiers trapped in quicksand-like mud make easy targets. Lieutenant Benjamin Hodgson falls into the water, shot through the leg. Another officer grabs him, but a second bullet finds its mark. Bodies float downstream. Of Reno's 140 men, 40 are dead, wounded, or missing within an hour. As Reno's survivors dig in atop the bluffs, Custer's battalion vanishes into the dust and Gunzum smoke to the north. 3 miles away, he's discovered the true size of the village, and it's far too late to retreat. The massive camp stretches beyond sight. Warriors stream out like angry bees from a kicked hive. There's no shock, no surprise, no panic, only deadly purpose. As Reno's men fled in panic, Custer made a discovery that changed everything. From high bluffs, he finally saw what his scouts had tried to tell him. Not a camp to be scattered, but a nation assembled. The largest gathering of hostile natives in frontier history, and they were ready. 3:15 p.m. From the heights above Medicine Tail Coulee, George Armstrong Custer finally sees the village in its entirety. The sight stops him cold. Tip is stretched beyond the range of field glasses. The pony herd covers square miles. Smoke from cooking fires creates its own weather. This isn't a target, it's a city now boiling with warriors. Sergeant Daniel Kenipe gallops past, carrying Custer's last coherent order: "Bring the pack train forward." "We've got them, boys," Custer shouts, but his voice carries false bravado. Officers exchange glances. They can count. Below them, warriors mass by the hundreds. More stream from the village every moment. Custer leads his 5 companies, companies C, E, F, I, and L, down Medicine Tail toward the river. 210 men in column, horses struggling in the heat. The plan seems clear. Cross at the ford. Strike the village center while warriors engage Reno. Classic Custer. Audacious, aggressive, assuming enemy panic. But archaeology reveals something even more disturbing. Shell casings show the soldiers never reached the river in force. Warriors had already crossed to meet them. Mininju warrior White Cowbull would later describe watching blue-coated soldiers ride down the like buffalo going to water. Easy targets against the skyline. The first shots crack out at 3:30. Company L under Lieutenant James Calhoun Custer's brother-in-law takes the lead. Warriors hidden in brush along the river open fire. Horses scream and fall. The momentum breaks. Instead of a charge, it becomes a probe. Then a hesitation, then a halt. Here's where courage became terror. Soldiers expected warriors to defend from the village. Instead, hundreds crossed the river, moving upstream and downstream, beginning the surround. Gaul, whose wives and children had been killed in Reno's attack, led warriors with personal vengeance driving them. They didn't wait behind cover, they attacked. Captain Miles Cogg's company, one tries to force the crossing. Warriors' gunfire turns the ford into a death trap. Soldier John Martin would later find spent shells showing where troopers made their stand. Not many shells, the stand didn't last long. Bodies would be found here, stripped and scattered along the banks. The temperature that day would matter more than anyone knew. 90 degrees drained strength from horses already exhausted from a night march. Soldiers wearing wool uniforms began to dehydrate. Cantons emptied. The river, so close, might as well be miles away. Thirst would become another enemy. From the village, a sound builds that no soldier ever forgets. The war cries of over 1,000 warriors taking the field. Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho, each with their own battle songs, create a wall of sound that carries over gunfire. Women trill encouragement. Children and elderly flee north, but fighting men surge south toward the shooting. Crazy Horse emerges as the tactical mastermind, while Gaul pins Custer at the ford. Crazy Horse leads hundreds of warriors in a sweeping movement north and east. They know this ground, every draw, every ridge, every blind spot. The soldiers are insects trapped in a web of terrain. Then the warriors did something unexpected. Instead of massing for charges, they infiltrated in small groups. Using ravines and folds in the earth, they crept within rifle range. Their Winchesterers and Henry repeaters could fire 16 shots without reloading. Soldiers with single-shot Springfields couldn't match the volume of fire. Wooden Leg, a Cheyenne warrior, described the battle's rhythm. We young men rushed in to strike blows or fire guns, then raced away. New groups of young men would rush in while we caught our breath. Constant pressure, never letting soldiers organize or aim properly. Death by 1,000 cuts. But then something even more terrifying happened. Some soldiers' Springfield carbines began to jam. The copper cartridge cases, heated by rapid firing, expanded and stuck in the breeches. Troopers desperately pried at stuck shells with knives while warriors closed in. Archaeological evidence found numerous unfired cartridges with pry marks. Soldiers died trying to clear their weapons. White Bull, Sitting Bull's nephew, counted coup on a soldier still alive touching an enemy in battle. The highest honor, he described bluecoats brave but crazy, fighting hard but without thinking. Military discipline, so crucial to survival, began to crack under relentless pressure. By 400 p.m., Custer's battalion has given up reaching the village. They're not attacking, they're reacting. Companies wheel north, seeking high ground, but Crazy Horse has already thought 3 moves ahead. Warriors stream through ravines, racing to cut off retreat. The hunting party becomes the hunted. The battalion's movement north becomes increasingly desperate. Horses stumble and fall, unable to recover. Wounded men can't keep up. Unit cohesion, the glue holding military forces together, starts to dissolve. Companies bunch up. Officers lose control of spacing. Fear spreads faster than orders. 4:15 p.m. Lieutenant Calhoun tries to establish a defensive position on what history calls Calhoun Hill. Company L dismounts, forms a rough skirmish line facing south and west. It's good tactical ground, high with clear fields of fire. For a moment it seems like order might hold, but the scouts saw something that made their blood freeze. Warriors weren't just coming from the village. Now, Crazy Horse's force appeared from the north and east. Behind them, the terrible realization: they're surrounded. No retreat, no reinforcement, no escape. This single decision doomed them all. Instead of concentrating forces, Custer had strung his companies out over a mile of ridge line. Company L on Calhoun Hill, Company I under Keogh on a ridge to the northwest. Companies C, E, and F moving toward what would become Last Stand Hill. Spread too thin to support each other, too far to concentrate fire, the power dynamic shifts completely. Warriors gain confidence with each small victory. They can see soldiers falling, see the panic spreading. Some warriors have captured cavalry horses and weapons. They turn army carbines against their former owners. The tide has turned irreversibly. Tom Custer, the general's brother, commands Company C. He wears 2 medals of honor from the Civil War, the only soldier to earn 2 during that conflict. He captured Confederate battle flags in hand-to-hand combat. Now he watches his company shrink under accurate rifle fire. No flags to capture here, only survival to fight for. Then came a sound that changed everything: the recall trumpet. Custer orders all companies to concentrate on the highest hill, but it's too late for organized movement. The retreat becomes a race. Companies dissolve into groups, groups into individuals. Some make it to Custer Hill. Many don't. Cog's Company I dies where it stands, protecting the retreat. Keogh himself falls near his horse Camanche. The mount taking 7 bullets, but somehow surviving. Wild panic ensues as leaderless soldiers run for the presumed safety of Last Stand Hill. Warriors ride them down like buffalo. The archaeology tells the story. Shell casings spread over miles, showing running fights. Soldiers died in ravines behind sagebrush, anywhere they sought cover. Some bodies found with only a few shells nearby. They died quickly, others surrounded by dozens of casings. They sold their lives dearly. Boston Custer, the general's youngest brother, had come along as a civilian guide. Armstrong Reed, their 18-year-old nephew, rode with them for adventure. They die within sight of each other. Family bonds meaning nothing to Winchester bullets. The Custer family would lose 3 members in 45 minutes. But here's what changes everything about the traditional narrative. This wasn't a last stand in any heroic sense. It was a progressive collapse, units dissolving under pressure, men running for their lives, the myth of soldiers standing in square fighting to the last cartridge. Pure fiction, reality was chaos. Terror and death delivered piecemeal across dusty hills. 4:45 p.m. The remnants of 5 companies, perhaps 80 men still alive, cluster on what history calls Last Stand Hill. But the name itself perpetuates the myth. The hill is too small for effective defense, barely a rise in the ground. No water, no cover, no hope. Wooden Leg watched the final stages. The soldiers were very brave. They kept together and kept fighting. But keeping together meant dying together. Warriors fired from all sides, the volume of incoming fire. Hundreds of rifles shooting at dozens made defense impossible. Men fell every second. Here's the moment when discipline became panic. Some soldiers shot their horses for breastworks, a cavalry tactic for desperate situations. But dying horses, thrashing in agony, only added to the chaos. Others tried to dig rifle pits with knives and mess kits. The hard Montana earth yielded nothing but dust. The command structure collapses entirely. Custer likely dies early in this phase. A shot through the left temple and another through the chest. Without him, no one takes clear command. Captains and lieutenants die trying to rally their men. Sergeants fall maintaining fire discipline. Leadership bleeds away, then the ammunition runs low. Each soldier carried 100 rounds. In an hour of fighting, many had fired most of it. The pack train with reserves might as well be on the moon. Some soldiers stopped shooting, saving last bullets for themselves. Archaeological evidence suggests some did exactly that. Skulls with cloves, range powder burns. White Cow Bull claims he killed a soldier he believed was Custer. Big nose, long hair, worn buckskin. Others made similar claims. The truth hardly matters. In those final minutes, Custer was just another target in blue. No longer the boy general, but a man facing death like his troopers. The final breakup comes suddenly. A group of soldiers, maybe 20, breaks from the hill, running north toward a deep ravine. It's not retreat, it's flight. Pure panic. Warriors ride them down in the open. Bodies would be found strung out over a 4 mile, some almost reaching the ravine before death caught them. By 5:15, perhaps 5:30, the shooting stops, not all at once, but sputtering out like a dying fire. A few wounded soldiers still move. Warriors approach carefully. Sometimes a dying man had 1 shot left. The coup counting begins. Young warriors earning honor touching dead enemies. From the village, women and old men stream toward the battlefield. They carry clubs, knives, awls. What happens next doesn't match any romantic notion of noble warfare. These soldiers had come to kill their families. Now families took revenge on the bodies. The mutilation serves both practical and spiritual purposes, preventing enemies from fighting in the afterlife. But one survivor witnessed it all. Comanche, Captain Kyogue's horse, stands among the bodies. 7 wounds bleed freely, but the horse lives. Warriors consider him sacred, wounded but still standing like their own people. They let him wander away. He alone carries the full memory of how 210 soldiers met their end on a hillside above the Little Bighorn. As the last shots echoed across the hills, the real horror was about to begin. The silence after gunfire carries its own terror. 5:30 p.m. Smoke drifts across Custer Hill. Bodies sprawl in clusters. Here 5 men who died together. They're a lone soldier who made it 20 yards before falling. The entire battle from first shot to last has taken 67 minutes. An entire battalion wiped out, but the killing was only half the story. Now came the part historians struggle to describe. Women, children, and elderly stream from the village. Many have lost husbands, sons, fathers to army bullets. If not today, then in previous attacks on peaceful camps. They carry traditional tools for honoring enemy dead, ensuring they can't fight in the spirit world. The practice seems barbaric to modern minds, but cultural context matters. Plains warriors believe the body's condition affected the afterlife. Cutting tendons prevented walking. Puncturing eardrums stopped hearing. Slashing thighs hobbled riding. These weren't acts of savage cruelty, but religious warfare as meaningful as any Christian burial ritual. Kate Bighead, a Cheyenne woman, walked among the dead, seeking soldiers who had attacked her village at Washita. She found none, but described the scene. The white men were crazy. They fought as individuals, not together. At the end, they shot each other and themselves. Her account, recorded years later, provides the only female perspective of the aftermath. Some specific mutilations told personal stories. One soldier's heart was cut out and placed on a rock. Perhaps Tom Custer, who had worn a tattoo of the goddess Liberty over his heart. Another had arrows driven through his body until he looked like a pincushion. Possibly Mark Kellogg, the civilian reporter who chose the wrong story to cover, but Custer's body received different treatment. Found near the top of Last Standal, he had 2 wounds, left temple and right breast. His body remained largely untouched, though some accounts say awls were thrust through his ears so he would hear better in the next world, having failed to hear warnings in this one. The death toll shocks in its completeness. Of Custer's immediate command, no white man survived. 210 soldiers and attached personnel died. The only living things found later were Comanche and several other wounded horses. Even dogs brought by soldiers died in the fighting. Total annihilation. Meanwhile, 4 miles south, Reno's and Bentine's commands dug in on their hilltop. 350 soldiers and scouts held a defensive perimeter. Warriors flushed with victory pressed attacks until darkness, then continued harassing fire through the night. The soldiers had water only by desperate runs to the river under fire. Here's what really terrifies. The warriors could have overwhelmed Reno's position. They had numbers, momentum, and superior firepower. But tribal warfare wasn't about total annihilation. They had protected their village, killed many enemies. Honor was satisfied. As darkness fell, victory celebrations began in the village below. Through the night of June 25th, Reno's men heard sounds that chilled their souls. Victory songs echoed from the village. Drums beat steadily. Warriors fired rifles captured from Custer's men. The soldiers recognized the distinctive sound of Springfield carbines now turned against them. No one knew Custer's fate, but the celebration scale suggested catastrophe. Dawn, June 26th, brought renewed attacks. Warriors pressed closer, picking off soldiers who showed themselves. The wounded suffered terribly. No medical supplies, no surgeon with Reno's command. Men drank their own urine. Horses went mad with thirst. Some soldiers showed signs of combat breakdown, crying or refusing to fight. Then, mysteriously, the attacks slackened around noon. Scouts reported massive movement in the village. By evening, the entire camp was moving south away from the soldiers. Lodgepoles came down, travois loaded. The massive pony herd driven ahead, 8 zeros. 0 people on the move looked like a city relocating. Why did they leave with victory incomplete? Sitting Bull knew more soldiers would come. His vision showed soldiers falling into camp, fulfilled. It didn't show what came after. The warriors had won the battle, but couldn't win the war. Better to disperse, preserve the victory, live to fight another day. By dark on June 26th, Reno's men were alone. June 27th dawned eerily quiet. Survivors peek over their rifle pits. The valley stands empty except for funeral scaffolds and debris. Scouts venture out, expecting ambush. Nothing, the greatest assembly of Plains Indians has vanished like smoke. Only the dead remain as proof of what happened. Lieutenant James Bradley, scouting for General Terry's column, makes the discovery. From a distance, he spots white objects scattered on distant hills. Through field glasses, the objects resolve into bodies, many bodies. He leads a patrol to investigate. What they find defies their ability to process. Soldiers stripped naked, bloated from heat, many mutilated beyond recognition. The battlefield stretched for miles. Bodies lay where they fell, in ravines, on hillsides, clustered in death, where units made final stands. The smell in 90 degrees heat was overwhelming. Hardened frontier soldiers vomited, some openly wept. The scale of defeat, the totality of death struck even veterans speechless. 3 days later, General Terry's men crested the hill and saw something that would haunt them forever. June 28, 10:00 a.m., General Terry's column approaches the battlefield. Crow's scouts riding ahead suddenly pull up, pointing at distant hillsides. Through the morning haze, what looks like scattered patches of snow slowly resolves into something else. Naked bodies turned white by sun, and death spread across miles of Montana grassland. The identification process becomes a nightmare. 3 days in brutal heat has rendered many bodies unrecognizable, faces swollen beyond recognition. Tattoos and scars become the only identification. Officers carry notebooks trying to match bodies with company rosters. Some they never identify. Mass graves are dug where units fell. But archaeology reveals something even more disturbing about the traditional narrative. Forensic analysis of the battlefield shows most soldiers died running, not standing. Shell casing patterns indicate fighting retreats, not heroic squares. Bodies found far from last standal suggest panic, not organized resistance. The myth crumbled under scientific scrutiny. Lieutenant Edward Godfrey found Custer's body on June 28. He lay among 40 other bodies near the hilltop, appearing almost peaceful compared to others. Godfrey counted over 200 bodies across the entire field. The burial detail worked through stifling heat, scratching shallow graves in hard earth. Many bodies would be exposed again by weather and animals. Then they found Camanche. The horse stood in a ravine, head hanging, covered in dried blood. 7 wounds marked his body, neck, lung, hind quarters. How he survived when 210 men died remains one of history's mysteries. Soldiers tenderly led him to the river, bathed his wounds, fed him by hand. He would live another 15 years, a living memorial to the dead. The myths began immediately. Newspaper headlines screamed of Custer's heroic last stand, surrounded but defiant. Artists painted dramatic scenes of soldiers in perfect squares, Custer prominent with flowing hair and raised saber. The reality of panic, rout, and piecemeal destruction didn't fit America's need for heroic narrative. Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse became the most wanted men in America. Within a year, most Plains tribes were forced onto reservations. Sitting Bull fled to Canada, returning to surrender in 1881. Crazy Horse surrendered in 1877, only to be bayoneted while allegedly resisting arrest. The victory at Little Bighorn sealed their people's fate. America would never tolerate such defiance again. Modern understanding shifts the narrative completely. This wasn't civilization versus savagery, but 2 incompatible world-views colliding. The Lakota and Cheyenne fought for their homeland, their way of life, their very existence. They won the battle with superior tactics, better weapons, and knowledge of terrain. Custer lost through arrogance, dividing his forces and underestimating his enemy. Those 210 men didn't die as heroes. They died as humans, terrified and alone, abandoned by the tactical system meant to protect them. They died because their commander believed in a myth of native cowardice. They died because Washington wanted gold more than honor treaties. They died as pawns in a larger game of conquest and resistance. Today, the Little Bighorn battlefield stands as a national monument. Markers show where soldiers fell, scattered across miles of grassland. The wind still blows through the same ravines where men sought cover and found death. Visitors come seeking the myth, but find something more complex. A story of human failure, cultural collision, and the terrible price of arrogance, meeting desperation on a Montana hillside.